Hello there, you're watching Context, and I'm Orkan Amashov here to ask some pertinent questions, to hear elucidating answers. Today, on the 525th anniversary of the discovery of Brazil and the 55th anniversary of the first Earth Day celebration and the 9th anniversary of the signing of the Paris Agreement, exactly 5 months after the official end date of COP29 held in Baku and en route to COP30 to be hosted in Brazil, it is incumbent upon us to establish where we are as humanity, where we are heading to, and if climatic sensibilities that dominated previous UN climate change conferences will retain their relevance. COP29, regarded by many as a great and resounding success, in many crucial respects, still fell short of some high-pitched expectations due to what is widely described as a growing chasm between the global north and the global south. Last year in Baku, the world at large reached what back then looked like a near impossible consensus on a tripling finance to developing countries from the previous goal of $100 billion annually to $300 billion annually by 2035, and B, securing efforts of all actors to work together to scale up finance to developing countries from public and private sources to the amount of $1.3 trillion annually by 2035. At the same time, COP29 saw considerable and some fundamental progress on carbon markets, with a long-awaited agreement that long eluded previous COPs being attained under Article 6.2 and Article 6.4 of the Convention. On the whole, critics believe that the progress on achieving the goals of the Paris Agreement has been very slow. In fact, some would say unbearably and excruciatingly slow. Let us just remind ourselves that the overarching goal is to hold the increase in the global average temperature to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and pursue efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Well, with Trump's presidency underway and US-Europe relations facing challenging times, and China arguably leading the charge, or at least beginning to do so, it remains another question if politics of climate change will remain the same, or it will assume a different shape with some permanent consequences to come. And joining me from São Paulo, Brazil, to discuss climatic sensibilities and politics surrounding them are Diego Castro Silva, political analyst, and Felipe Faria, Chief Executive Officer, Green Building Council, Brazil. Well, welcome to both of you.
Hello. Hello, Mr. Orkan. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us today.
Hello.
Well, today is 525th anniversary of the discovery of Brazil. It's not a beginning of Brazil as a political entity, but still an important moment to reflect upon, I suppose. And where does Brazil stand in this debate, in this wider climate change debate? My first question is addressed to Diogo.
Okay, so Brazil is an integral part of the climate agenda for many reasons. In fact, it inaugurated these COPs were started in Brazil back in '92. And so it's a critical country in the climate agenda. However, Brazil is also at the crossroads as a developing country on how to achieve full development and at the same time pushing forward the agenda. This provides contradictory objectives. If you look at the Amazon, preserving the forest, and so forth. So that is my belief is going to be a major theme in this conference in Belém, the COP30, and one that will be under the shadow of the new geopolitics, because the new geopolitics means that countries are also investing, namely in defense, in other things other than climate, which means, for example, all the philosophy that was the transfer of money from developed countries to developing countries, including Brazil, perhaps being challenged, which is one of the consequences of the new geopolitics of that we live in.
Felipe, Diogo mentioned about the shadow of geopolitics. Many observers and commentators back late last year were saying that COP29, which was held in Baku, was the last one of its kind. A new COP will be completely different. How do you envision the next COP30, the next UN climate conference? And do you think that in the midst of geopolitical debate and geopolitical exigencies, the substance of the discussion, the substance is all about climate change, which is not bound to be political matter, is somewhat being lost?
Yeah, I think that for the COP30, I think as the president of COP, Ambassador Lago mentioned, which is one of the priorities, adaptation resilience. I think adaptation resilience, the agenda, is an agenda that works for all of us, independently of the geopolitical status. Because this is what we're seeing. We already living in a situation when we need to face the heat wave, cold wave. Main cities all over the world are suffering with flood. So there are a lot of situations that justify for all of us, no matter their beliefs and no matter their political ideology.
Diogo, in Baku at COP29, I think it was Simon Steele who said that the new finance goal was described by him. He described it as an insurance policy for humanity. And he said that amidst worsening climate impacts hitting every country, this is, as an insurance plan for humanity, is good, but like any insurance policy, it only works if premiums are paid in full and on time. So at COP29 in Baku, that $300 billion figure has been agreed upon. It's an important figure. It's a tripling of the previous figure agreed back in 2009, but it's all about the implementation as well. Sort of connecting COP29 with COP30 and focusing on the question of implementation. Do you think that the world community is moving in the right direction when it comes to the proper implementation?
Well, no, and although I agree with Felipe that the part of the resilience is the easier one, that one is the hard one, because it was a huge breakthrough in Baku to have agreed on that amount and starting the mechanism. But I'm quite pessimistic because, like I said, states will be faced with numerous emergencies, namely in the Northern Hemisphere and the rich countries, which would finance most of that mechanism. And the question of defense expenditure will be huge, namely in Europe. So I don't know how countries will be able to balance all of those demands. Furthermore, in an economic scenario which is much less rosier because, I mean, we might be in a global recession by the end of the year. So it's a very hard, I would be very hard pressed to be optimistic about those income transfers because I see the context as being very challenging for that to be executed in full.
And during COP29, main discussion was centered around the chasm between global north and global south. But now the geopolitics has changed with Trump's rise to power and bearing in mind that he's in charge and he will be in charge at least until 2028. We also notice the certain elements of frictions within the larger transatlantic alliance, with Europe growing increasingly unhappy with some of the policies of Trump administration, including those policies related to climate change. Do you think that there's something deeply wrong, already deeply wrong, or visibly deeply wrong about this perceived global north, global south dichotomy? Felipe?
Yeah, no, I think that when we discuss, our role here in Brazil is very focused on the built environment agenda. So we work with buildings. In the building sector, we don't see that this new geopolitical agenda is forcing any kind of situation when we need to have step backs in the green building agenda. When I say green building agenda, we are talking about how to transform our buildings and how we can work on the decarbonization and adaptation through the building sector. I think that when we talk about adaptation, which is the main agenda for the global south, when we discuss like climate transitions, yes, the amount of money is not enough, but it's able to start from a certain point. What we are not seeing is that we have like this resource available, but how to unlock it, this is the challenge. And then I think that the discussions that we are involved in right now is how to be able to discuss with important finance institutions situations and mechanisms that we can really unlock the sustainable finance products through buildings that can easily prove decarbonization metrics, and more important than it, for the global south, adaptation. When I say adaptations, one of the main agenda for us is to accelerate to solve the situations of the housing deficit. We cannot and improve. We need to advance in this agenda with better quality. I mean, like insulations. We need to have more comfortable health on the housing sector, especially for the affordable, because the vulnerables are the ones that will suffer with the heat wave, with the cold wave. So for this agenda, which is one of the priorities for the global south, I think we have technologies and resources available to start to accelerate it. So I don't see that this geopolitical like alarm that we cannot move on. No, we can continue to move on, because this is an agenda that works for everyone. So no matter what is your geopolitical preferences. So I think we need to advance quickly in the agenda of the adaptations and resilience. So I think the success of this COP is how to better find out the arguments according to our exact moment. And as you see, like in most of the pictures, the image that we are seeing in the screen, there are situations that show us that, yes, a heat wave or cold wave, and how we can support those vulnerable to solve this problem, and at the same time with low carbon emissions. So then we are going to see industrializations in all these global south construction industry countries, and other technologies like renewable technologies to provide energy. Water efficiency is one of the points. Another point that is crucial for the global south is water. So most of the cities in the global south, they are suffering with high stress. So how can we need to deal with the topic of water as well? So I think that the combinations between mitigations and adaptations will be one of the main points for this COP30 in Brazil.
Thank you very much for setting out the prospective agenda for COP30. In Baku, the COP was described by many as a climate finance COP. But there were many issues discussed. It wasn't just about, of course, finance. Finance was one of the key preponderant elements of the agenda. There have been many important achievements in the context of, as I mentioned during my introduction, the carbon credits mechanism, Article 6.2, Article 6.4, which actually, the first agreement was attained on day one. I vividly recall climate finance goal was attained under extremely difficult circumstances. Diogo, we all understand what is to be done in terms of adaptation, mitigation, about finding a delicate balance between different measures. I think that in that regard, there is an element of the growing sort of signs of consensus across the world. But the question during COP29 was central question about this, who should pay and why. It was about that fundamental question of the historic responsibility of the Western civilization or the Western countries, those developed countries, and the current predicament of global South countries. And this was one of the main reasons why politics of climate change back then assumed such a palpable degree of geopolitical identity. Although Felipe mostly focused on that nitty-gritty technological part of the debate, those elements are absolutely key to the substance, and earlier I mentioned that substance should not be forgotten, but do you still believe that that geopolitics will retain its centrality this year in November in Brazil, Belém, as well?
Well, when I mean the geopolitical context is the context that we are a world with a lot of conflicts, and it's not only a matter of side, but a matter of what states perceive as a threat. But let me go back to your question and say the following. What was behind the idea of transfer of money between developed countries and in development countries was the fact that if developing countries reach the same levels of energy consumption per capita than in the North, or that the North attained in the past, there is no possibility to reach a climate goal. So the question is how to make that happen. And that, in my view, relies not only in public transfers of funds, which, as I say, are more challenging now because of the geopolitical context, because rich countries have priorities that are eating away in financial terms on the climate agenda, but also through regulation, through the creation of markets that can push the private sector not by sympathy or mission, but by a profit to come and push the agenda forward. Felipe was telling on the built environment, meaning the construction sector writ large. That is a crucial sector because it's 40% of total carbon emissions. So, and that is a sector where there is profit associated with climate agenda, meaning if I, as a builder, I build a more efficient building, it's more profitable building. So in those agendas where there is no conflict between profit and sustainability, and in my view, almost all of them, you don't have that conflict in the long run, then the agenda can be pushed forward. If the agenda is just focused on the question of transfer of public money from developed countries to developing countries, there I feel we will reach something that will not be executable in the short term. And that is, I think, what we don't want. So I think there is a room for the agenda to be pushed forward, but we need to be attentive to that the world is in a much more stressful place. Climate is one, it's making its impacts felt, but the whole world is in a much more conflict oriented state than it was even a year ago.
Felipe, what would you say to what Diogo said earlier about the fundamental problem or fundamental weakness in the argument or predisposition, which is centered around transfer of money from public money from one group of countries to another group of countries?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with Diego. I think that, this is an issue that we need to face, but if we explore in our agenda, instead of to only keep the discussions about how to transfer this money from developed country to underdeveloped country or emerging country. So I think that we have here an agenda when we talk about sustainability in, again, I'm from the construction industry sector. So we are conciliating, we can easily conciliate. We have a technology available, we have methodology available to conciliate the climate transition agenda, I mean mitigation and adaptations, with the best business model in the real estate market. So we have, here in Brazil, for example, we have 70 millions of square meters under construction, where we have the best metrics of energy efficiency, water efficiency, indoor air quality, thermal comfort, acoustic comfort, and all so many other environmental and social benefits, where we conciliate with accelerations of the occupancy rate, better retention, reductions of the operational cost of buildings, sometimes a premium value per square meter. So we are talking about business differentiation. So I think when we have this ability to better position our arguments and pointing out the economic benefits, we can make this agenda of sustainability to grow quickly.
Thank you, Felipe. My last question is going to be addressed to Diogo, just very briefly. Diogo, we talked about geopolitics. Of course, geopolitics is only one component of the whole debate, and we shouldn't sort of overestimate perhaps the scale or the proportion of geopolitics in the whole debate. But China, it looks like, emerging as a power to be reckoned with in this particular field. I remember during COP29, when there were discussions surrounding the attainment of that figure, the Chinese representatives and Europeans were talking to each other, and effectively there was a fundamental, if I'm not mistaken, Chinese role in achieving that consensus. And China is very much into green energy and green energy technologies. In the context of wider US-China confrontation, do you believe in this area, in this realm, China could emerge as a real superpower in the years to come?
Yes, and it's interesting that you bring China to the debate, because that will be one of the crucial elements to the COP. First of all, there is no energy transition and there is no climate agenda without China, not only because of the size of Chinese economy, but China manufactures at scale many of the things necessary for that transition. For example, solar panels, batteries, technology of electrical vehicles. So China is an essential actor. Back in 2016, when we had the first mandate of Trump, where China had the same opportunity, it wasn't in exactly the same position as it is now, but also China's diplomacy didn't fully take advantage of the void created by Trump's policies in the global arena, because they were in regarding climate, they were more or less the same. Now I think the Chinese government seems to want to be more proactive in filling that void. For Brazil in particular, there are a few challenges with the tariff war and the trade war, because they will put additional pressure to the Amazon deforestation, because with China importing more soybean from Brazil, there will be pressure for sure for deforestation in the Amazon and in the wetlands of the West. But overall, China's role can be extremely constructive in pushing an agenda that can really, and it's the country that can put, the equipment and the infrastructure necessary to promote the energy transition, which is at the center of the climate agenda, because the climate agenda is all about energy. So without China, that agenda of transitioning energy from fossil fuels to non-fossil fuels cannot happen.
Well, Diogo Castro Silva and Felipe Faria, thank you very much indeed to both of you for your time and for your very informing answers. I'm so grateful to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, yeah. Today I've conversed with Diogo Castro Silva, political analyst, and Felipe Faria, Chief Executive Officer of Green Building Council. They both joined from São Paulo, Brazil. We discussed COP30, the prospective agenda, what happened during COP29, geopolitics of the politics of climate change, and many other related matters. You are watching Context, and see you very soon indeed.